Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, Mysterious Voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. Today it is Poetry Thursday, so I want to talk about some interesting poetry that I've found. Today's poem deals with bells and disaster, it would seem. I am referring to Heart of the Bell by Heidi Rhodes. For those who don't know, Heidi Rhodes is a Colombian-American writer who has been getting their work published for some time now. They write a number of books of poetry and things like that. And something interesting is their work. They have said that their work focuses on hauntology, which is the study of how the past cultural stuff comes back to haunt the present, which I didn't even know there was a term for such a thing. So that is something that I have learned today. Very, very pretty cool. Yeah. Definitely a lot of, the past coming back to haunt the present in today's America, especially. Also, Heidi is queer and non-binary, so it's always exciting to be able to talk about LGBTQA poets outside of June, when I normally talk about those poets intentionally, and it's hard to find those poets kind of naturally in my everyday consumption of poetry, but it does happen, is the thing that I mean to say there. But without further ado, let's talk about this poem. I will read it, do a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. Heart of the Bell, Prague, 2018. If the heart of the bell breaks, catastrophe will strike. That is the legend. Last time, a flood. Next, who can know but the bell, its cloven meat, quiet crack of bronze, anticipating its own demise, drowned in the clang-like fist and metal murmur. What other creature keeps its heart inside its head, full of the hour's secrets and tender prayers? I do not doubt the stories how bells say and say, even after they have been lost in the rubble or at sea, say and say how they paced into hiding or grieved their knell siblings melted for war's hungry rounds, how they stilled their blood in the chill of state restraint, that longest and most silent hour of the body's yearning. Say, a silver bell is really a thumbscrew, no heart at all. Say, touch me, I am no longer a bell if I do not ring. How bells say and say, perfectly tuned by centuries, their hammered and quarreling overtures, haunting ringent ears, calling the forgotten, calling me. I'm called to pray in the clamor, holy brazen speech carapaced in its stony tower, devout lick of metal to the fairest brim, its chime sway waking my deadest earth. To pray, which is to taste you, ring you loud to greet you 1,000 times, offer my heart to your mouth, and bellow the walls. Anything that reminds me how small we are. To be swallowed by the boom of fullest sound, the agony and wonder of wanting the beloved's more crisp break of a mere day off the year's chanted yearnings, intonations that we will never last, longer than a breath in the face of the infinite. To want to be peeled by the hour, to say and say, to invite the lightning by this thunder lust, lure the cry of living a shatter near, to feel the crack of the ampersand organ in the vesper's dusky light. To know the catastrophe to come, but nonetheless ring and ring and ring and ring. In terms of analysis, there is quite a bit that we're talking about with Heart of the Bell. It reminds me a little bit of the poem Turning and Turning the Widening Gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things Fall Apart, I believe, by Kate Yeats, one of them. I'm not, it reminds me of like a sense of doom coming for us all. And not being able to escape it. And I'm reminded that I never actually talked about that poem, so I will be talking about that in the future. But there's a lot of doom kind of scattered throughout this poem. There's no strict narrative, but it merely talks about the idea of being a bell and hearkening doom before us. It says, if the heart of the bell breaks, catastrophe will strike. That is the legend last time a flood. I do not doubt the stories how bells say and say even after they have been lost in the rubble or at sea. How bells say and say perfectly tuned by centuries, their hammered and quarreling overtures, haunting ringent ears. To be swallowed by the boom of fullest sound, the agony and wonder of wanting the beloved's more crisp break of a mere day off the year's chanted yearnings. To know the catastrophe to come, but nonetheless ring and ring and ring and ring. And I do like the ring and ring and ring at the end of the poem because it adds a sense of drama, a sense of repetition of getting at what a bell does. But yeah, there's a lot of doom in this poem. A lot of foreboding, a lot of a sense of dread of what is to come. Something catastrophic like a flood, perhaps hearkening back to the biblical flood, or the deluge myth that a lot of cultures seem to have. Maybe that's referring back to the whole hauntology kind of thing that Heidi talks about in her work. But it could even be like... it couldn't be like a grand sense of doom, but a smaller sense of warlike doom, where they say, or grieved their Nell siblings melted for war's hungry rounds, how they stilled their blood in the chill of state restraint, that longest and most silent hour of the body's yearning. And, there it's a much smaller sense of doom, of war, of coming destruction. There's also a sense of even like personal doom. Of love not working out. It says, to be swallowed by the boom of fullest sound, the agony of wonder of wanting the beloved's more crisp break of a mere day off. The year's chanted yearnings, intonations that will never last, longer than a breath in the face of the infinite. Maybe a relationship that's not quite going to work out. So a lot of senses of doom scattered throughout this poem. Also, saying things is a theme of this poem. The bells ringing is a big part, but also there's a lot of synonyms for the word say. You have like of the body's yearning, say, a silver bell is wonder, really a thumbscrew, no heart at all, say, touch me. I am no longer a bell if I do not ring. How bells say and say. So say, there's a lot of saying there. Intonations that we will never last, the act of saying something. A crisp break of a mere day off the year's chanted yearning. So chanting is a big aspect of the poem. Lure of the cry of livening a shatter near to feel the crack of the ampersand. So there's quite a bit of saying in this poem. The act of talking, of being like a bell. Bells ring, but we say. Human beings say things. They talk, and there's many different ways that we can talk. Talking about chanting really adds to the whole aspect of the poem, because who chants? People who are part of a bigger group who might be trying to deliver destruction to other people. So this is quite a worrying poem. And at best, it might just be about a relationship that's not going to work out, which is not ideal. And at worst, this is about our coming destruction, the death of us all. And given that Heidi wrote this in 2018 in Prague, or I assume they wrote it at that period of time, at the height of, Trump's first term. And given that Heidi is from America, maybe that's the kind of stuff that Heidi was feeling, the coming destruction of us all. Although Heidi probably couldn't have predicted COVID, couldn't have predicted what's happening in Israel, couldn't have predicted the things that are happening with Iran and the entirety of Trump's second term, but I do think it adds credence to the overall sense of doom in this poem. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Heart of the Bell by Heidi Rhodes. Pretty stellar poem. I think it's pretty badass. I absolutely love the sense of dread, even though it makes me feel, pretty sad and whatnot. But I do think the things that Heidi writes about are compelling, and I highly recommend that you seek out this poem. I will put a link to it in the description, and go find more of Heidi's work as well, because they are a pretty stellar writer. If you have any thoughts about this poem, or you simply want to, comment on what I said here, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this poem, this poet, or Poetry Thursday if they don't already know. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and brazen bell-based travels. Farewell.